The pen hovered 2 inches above the document, trembling in Wallace Crane's liver-spotted hand, and the girl's voice cut through the hospital room's antiseptic quiet like a blade through silk. "That's not your signature, sir." Everyone turned. The girl stood in the doorway, small and dark-skinned, maybe 11, wearing a maintenance uniform 3 sizes too large, the sleeves rolled into thick cuffs at her wrists. Her hair was pulled back tight, her eyes sharp and unwavering behind smudged glasses held together with medical tape. She wasn't supposed to be there. No one had noticed her enter. But that was 6 minutes in the future. First, there was the day before. Tuesday morning arrived cold and slate gray over Manhattan, the kind of November dawn that made glass towers look like ice sculptures. Avery Mills pushed her cleaning cart through the service entrance of Mount Sinai Hospital at 5:43 a.m., the same time she'd arrived every weekday for 7 months, ever since her grandmother had died and left her with nothing but an expired work permit and a talent for becoming invisible. She wasn't supposed to be working. Child labor laws were clear on that. But the supervisor, a tired woman named Carmen who asked no questions, paid her in cash to empty trash bins and mop floors in the private wing. Rich people's illnesses, Carmen said, paid better than poor people's. Avery didn't care about the philosophy. She cared about the $200 a week that kept her in the youth hostel on Amsterdam Avenue, away from the shelter system that would ask her age and take away the only freedom she had left. The private wing was quiet at dawn, hushed in the way expensive places always were, as though money bought silence along with everything else. Avery moved through rooms methodically, learning to read the hierarchies of illness. Flowers meant visitors. Machines meant severity. Lawyers meant either death or money changing hands, sometimes both. Room 1147 had lawyers. 3 of them, to be exact, clustered around the bed where Wallace Crane lay propped on pillows, oxygen tube in his nose, his face the color of old newspaper. Avery had seen him before, everyone had. Wallace Crane, real estate magnate, New York fixture, owner of half the buildings south of Central Park, 89 years old, and dying slowly from congestive heart failure. The newspapers ran updates. His children released statements. The city watched and waited to see who would inherit an empire. Avery emptied the trash quietly, trying to be furniture. The lawyers spoke in low tones about asset transfers and tax implications. Wallace's son, Richard, 50-something, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Avery's entire life, stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear. His sister, Catherine, sat in the corner, perfectly still, watching their father with eyes that revealed nothing. "We need the signature today," one lawyer was saying. "The trust restructuring can't move forward without it." Wallace's hand shook as he reached for the pen. His voice, when it came, was thin and watery. "I don't remember. What does this do again?" "It simplifies everything, Dad," Richard said, pocketing his phone. "We've been over this. It puts the estate in our names now, avoids probate later, protects your legacy. Your children love you," Catherine added softly. "We're just trying to make things easier." Something in her voice made Avery pause. Not the words, the melody underneath them. False notes. Avery had learned to hear those on the street, in shelters, in every interaction where survival meant reading intention beneath presentation. Catherine's voice had the same cadence as the woman at the shelter who'd said, "I'll keep your backpack safe," before stealing everything inside it. Avery moved to the next trash bin, closer to the bed, watching from beneath her lashes. Wallace signed something, slow, shaking, his signature a jagged line. The lawyers exchanged looks. One cleared his throat. "Mr. Crane, we'll need you to sign the secondary transfer as well, the one we discussed regarding the Philadelphia properties and the foundation." More papers emerged from a leather portfolio. Wallace's hand trembled worse now, exhaustion setting in. "I'm tired. Can't we do this tomorrow?" "Tomorrow the market's closed for the holiday," Richard said. "It has to be today, Dad. Please. For us." Wallace reached for the pen again. The papers were dense with legal text, the kind meant to be incomprehensible. Avery had moved close enough now to see over the lawyer's shoulders, a skill she'd developed, reading upside down, scanning for the truth in documents people tried to hide. Her breath caught. The signature line at the bottom of the document had a name printed beneath it, Wallace Theodore Crane. But the signature Wallace had just written on the first page was different. Subtle, but different. The W curved wrong. The T in Theodore, his middle name, always included, was missing entirely. Someone had signed for him. Someone had practiced his signature, but not quite perfectly. She looked at the first document again, the one already signed, now being quietly shuffled into the portfolio. That signature was too steady, too controlled for a man whose hand shook lifting a water glass. "That's not your signature, sir," Avery said. The room froze. All eyes turned to her. The lawyers confused, Richard irritated, Catherine suddenly very still, very watchful. Wallace blinked, struggling to focus on the small figure in the oversized maintenance uniform. "Excuse me," Richard said coldly. "Who are you?" "Building services," Avery said, keeping her voice level despite her hammering heart. "I work here, and I saw what happened. That first paper you put away, he didn't sign it. Someone else did. The signature's wrong." "That's absurd," Catherine said. "Obviously our father signed his own documents." "Show him the first one," Avery said. "Show him what he supposedly signed 10 minutes ago. Ask him if that's his handwriting." One lawyer moved to close the portfolio. Richard stepped forward, face darkening. "This is a private family matter. You need to leave now before I call security." But Wallace had lifted one hand, a small gesture that carried ancient authority. "Wait," he whispered. Show me what I signed." The lawyers hesitated. In that hesitation, Avery saw everything: guilt, calculation, the moment before a house of cards collapsed. Richard's jaw tightened. Catherine stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that weren't quite steady. "Dad, you're confused," Richard said. "The medication makes you foggy. You signed the documents. We all watched you." "Then show him," Avery repeated, louder now. "If there's nothing wrong, just show him the paper." "Security," Catherine said quietly into her phone. "Room 1147. We have an unauthorized person harassing our father." But Wallace was struggling to sit up, oxygen tube pulling taut, monitors beginning to beep as his heart rate climbed. "Show me," he said, voice stronger now, some old steel returning. "Show me what I signed, or I'm not signing anything else." The door opened. 2 security guards entered, large and official. "We have a problem?" one asked. "Yes," Richard said. "This child is trespassing and making wild accusations." "I'm saying check the signature," Avery said quickly, words tumbling out before they could remove her. "The first document in that portfolio. Compare it to his real signature. He didn't sign it. Someone forged it. They're stealing everything while he's sick and can't fight back." "That's slander," one lawyer said sharply. "Then prove me wrong," Avery shot back. "Show the signature to the hospital administrator. Have a handwriting expert look at it. If I'm lying, I'll leave and never come back. But if I'm right—" She looked at Wallace, meeting his eyes directly. "If I'm right, sir, they're taking everything that's supposed to be yours." Wallace stared at her for a long moment. This small girl who'd appeared from nowhere to challenge his children, his lawyers, his entire carefully constructed final act. Then he looked at Richard, at Catherine, and something shifted in his watery eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or just the terrible clarity that sometimes comes too late. "Call the administrator," he whispered, "and call the police. Nobody leaves this room until we know the truth." The hospital administrator arrived in 12 minutes. A sharp-eyed woman named Dr. Helen Rees who'd built a career on discretion and crisis management. She entered room 1147 with 2 additional security personnel and the measured calm of someone accustomed to containing disasters before they metastasized into lawsuits. "Mr. Crane," she said evenly, "I understand there's a concern about document authenticity." Wallace nodded, breathing labored, his finger pointing weakly at the leather portfolio one lawyer still clutched. "That girl. She says, someone forged my signature. I want to know. I want to see." Dr. Reeves's gaze swept the room, cataloging players, the lawyers in expensive suits, Richard Crane by the window radiating controlled fury, Catherine standing with her phone clutched like a talisman, and finally Avery, small and defiant in her oversized maintenance uniform. "Who are you?" Dr. Reeves asked her directly. "Avery Mills. I clean the private wing. I saw Mr. Crane sign the first document, except he didn't actually sign it. His hand was shaking too much. Someone else must have done it earlier, maybe when he was sleeping, or maybe right in front of us just now, but I missed how. The handwriting's different from his real signature." "This is ridiculous," Richard said. "My father has been under enormous stress. This girl has no credentials, no authority. She has eyes, Dr. Reeves interrupted, which at the moment is all that's required. She turned to the lawyer holding the portfolio. I'll need to see the documents in question. These are confidential legal materials in my hospital involving my patient who has requested verification. You can show them to me now, or you can show them to the police when they arrive. Mr. Crane, have you called the police? Yes, Wallace whispered. I called them myself. While everyone was arguing. They're coming. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. Daddy, please. You're not thinking clearly. The medication, the stress. On dying, Wallace said, voice gaining unexpected strength. Not stupid. Show her the papers. The lawyer looked at Richard, who gave a tight nod. The portfolio opened. Documents emerged, dense with legalese and signature lines. Dr. Reeves examined them carefully, then pulled up Wallace's medical chart on the room's computer terminal. We have your signature on file from admission paperwork, she said. Multiple examples. Let me compare. The room waited in humming silence, broken only by the rhythm of monitors and Wallace's labored breathing. Avery stood very still, aware that she'd triggered something that might swallow her completely. If she was wrong, she'd be arrested, or worse, disappeared into a system that wouldn't care about her intentions. If she was right, Dr. Reeves's face revealed nothing as she compared documents, but her posture shifted, a slight stiffening, the body language of someone who'd found exactly what they'd hoped not to find. There are clear discrepancies, she said finally. The signature on the estate transfer document lacks Mr. Crane's characteristic terminal flourish on the E in Crane. The pressure is also inconsistent with his other signatures, too steady for someone with documented tremor and muscle weakness. I'm not a forensic examiner, but this warrants immediate investigation. This is absurd, one of the lawyers said, already closing his briefcase. We're leaving. Our firm will be filing complaints. No one leaves, Dr. Reeves said firmly. Security, please ensure all parties remain until the police arrive. The security guards moved to block the door. The lawyers exchanged looks, calculation and fear in equal measure. Richard turned to face the window, shoulders rigid. Catherine sat down slowly, phone forgotten in her lap, staring at her father with an expression Avery couldn't read. Wallace was crying, not dramatically, just quiet tears tracking down his papery cheeks. How long, he whispered. How long have you been planning this? Dad, Richard started. How long? The shout cost him. Wallace collapsed back against the pillows, gasping, monitors shrieking alarm. Dr. Reeves moved immediately, checking vitals, adjusting oxygen. Everyone out except family and medical staff. Now, the lawyers tried to leave. Security stopped them. Avery backed toward the door, but Wallace's hand shot out with surprising speed, gripping her wrist. Not her. She stays. She's the only one who told the truth. So Avery stood by the bed while a nurse came in, while Wallace's breathing slowly stabilized, while police sirens grew audible in the distance. Richard stared at her with naked hatred. Catherine wouldn't look at anyone at all. Why? Wallace asked his children finally. I was leaving you everything anyway. After I died. Why couldn't you wait? Because dying takes too long, Richard said bitterly. You've been dying for 3 years, Dad. 3 years of watching you cling to control while the company opportunities slip away. We need the assets now, not when you finally decide to let go. So you'd steal them? Forge documents. We'd accept what's rightfully ours, Catherine said quietly. You taught us that, remember? Take what you want before someone else does. That was always your philosophy. Wallace closed his eyes. I taught you wrong then. The police arrived, 2 detectives in plain clothes, a uniformed officer, the machinery of law enforcement grinding into motion. Dr. Reeves briefed them efficiently. The detectives examined documents, took statements, photographed evidence. The lawyers invoked attorney-client privilege and shut down. Richard and Catherine said nothing without counsel. Avery told them everything she'd seen, her voice steady despite exhaustion and fear. One detective, a woman named Torres with kind eyes, listened carefully. You work here? Torres asked. How old are you? 18, Avery lied. I have my papers at home. Torres's expression said she didn't believe it, but wouldn't push right now. You did the right thing, speaking up. Took courage. I just saw something wrong, Avery said. Anyone would have said something. No, Wallace whispered from the bed. Most people look away. Most people decide it's not their problem. He reached for her hand again. What's your name, child? Avery Mills, sir. Avery, you saved me today. Not my life. That's already circling the drain. But you saved something more important. My agency. My right to control my own ending. His grip was weak but insistent. Don't go yet. Please. I need to fix some things. The detectives took Richard and Catherine into the hallway for questioning. The lawyers were escorted to separate rooms. Dr. Reeves ordered everyone non-essential out, but Wallace refused to release Avery's hand, so she stayed, standing awkwardly beside a dying billionaire who'd just discovered his children's betrayal. You live alone? Wallace asked her. Yes, sir. Family. My grandmother raised me. She died last March. School. I go when I can. Mostly I work. Wallace studied her face with the intensity of someone trying to memorize features against encroaching darkness. You're too young to be working here. Too young to be alone. He paused, breathing hard. But old enough to see fraud and speak truth. That's rare, Avery Mills. Rarer than you know. I just didn't want them to steal from you, Avery said simply. That's not right, even if you're rich. Maybe especially because you're rich, you built it, so it's yours. Something like a laugh escaped Wallace's chest, wet and painful. Built it by crushing others, mostly. I was never a good man. But I thought I'd raised my children to at least be honest. He closed his eyes. Turns out I raised them to be exactly like me. Just patient enough to wait until I was helpless. Sir, listen, I'm going to make some calls. Change some things. But first, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll stay? Not just today. For what comes after. Will you do that? Avery didn't understand, but she nodded. I'll stay. Wallace smiled, a small, sad thing. Good. That's good. Outside, Manhattan afternoon faded toward evening. Police radios crackled. Lawyers argued in hallways. And in room 1147, a dying man held the hand of a girl who'd saved him and began the complicated work of rewriting an ending. The forensic handwriting analysis took 4 days. The results were conclusive. The signature on the estate transfer documents was forged, executed by someone who'd studied Wallace's handwriting but failed to replicate the fine motor inconsistencies of his neurological decline. Further investigation revealed Richard had practiced the signature for weeks, using medical records to time his attempt for a period when Wallace's lucidity was predictably impaired by medication. Catherine had known. The lawyers had known. It was conspiracy, fraud, and attempted theft of approximately $3 billion in assets. The criminal charges came swiftly. Richard and Catherine were arrested, bail set at $5 million each. Ironic, since accessing that money now required their father's cooperation, which was not forthcoming. The lawyers faced disbarment proceedings. The media descended like locusts, and the story became what New York stories always became when they involved wealth and betrayal. Entertainment for the masses, a morality play in real time. Avery watched it unfold from an unexpected vantage point. Wallace's hospital room. He'd refused to let her leave, offering payment for her time that was both generous and insistent. You're my security, he'd said. The only person in this building I trust not to kill me for money. He'd meant it as a joke, but the darkness underneath wasn't funny, and they both knew it. Dr. Reeves had quietly arranged for Avery to have a room in the hospital staff quarters, had asked no more questions about her age or paperwork. Some battles, her expression suggested, weren't worth fighting when the alternative was a child back on the street. Avery slept in a real bed for the first time in months and tried not to think about what would happen when Wallace died and his protection evaporated. But Wallace, it turned out, had other plans. I'm rewriting my will, he told her on the 6th day, when his breathing had stabilized enough for sustained conversation. His new lawyer, a woman named Margaret Chun who came recommended by the district attorney himself, sat beside the bed with a laptop and infinite patience. The old will left everything to Richard and Catherine. Obviously that's not happening now. What about other family? Avery asked. She'd been reading to him, The Count of Monte Cristo, which Wallace found appropriately ironic, and the question emerged naturally. Curiosity rather than calculation. None that aren't circling like vultures, waiting to see if they're in the will. I have a cousin in Connecticut who sends Christmas cards and a nephew in Oregon who called me once in 20 years. Wallace's voice was bitter. I built an empire and thought dynasty mattered. Turns out I just built a pile of money that makes people monstrous. So what will you do with it? Wallace smiled, and for a moment, Avery saw the man he must have been before illness had carved him down to essence. I'm going to give most of it away. The company goes to the employees, trust ownership, managed by an independent board. The properties get converted to affordable housing or sold with proceeds going to educational charities. The cash gets distributed to every organization I spent my life ignoring. Homeless services, foster care support, youth employment programs. He paused. People like you, Avery. People the system fails. That's good, Avery said quietly. That'll help a lot of people. And you, Wallace said. Specifically you. Avery looked up from the book. Sir, I'm establishing a trust in your name. $5 million, managed by Margaret until you turn 25, at which point you get full control. Before then, it pays for your education, whatever you want to study, wherever you want to go. Housing, medical care, everything you need to build a life. The room tilted slightly. Avery gripped the book harder. I can't, that's too much. I just told you what I saw. Anyone would have. We've established that's not true. Wallace interrupted. Most people wouldn't have said anything. Most people would have decided it wasn't their business, that billionaires can take care of themselves, that speaking up meant risk without reward. His eyes were fierce despite their watery blue. You spoke up anyway. You saved me from dying with my life's work stolen by my own children. That's worth more than $5 million. It's worth everything. Avery felt tears coming and fought them back. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll use it to become whoever you're meant to be. Someone who sees injustice and doesn't look away. We need more of those people. Wallace's breathing was labored now, the conversation taxing his failing heart. I can't fix what I built my fortune on. Can't undo the people I crushed or the corners I cut. But I can make sure that one good person, one honest, brave person, gets the chance I got. The chance to build something real. I accept, Avery whispered. Thank you. I'll make it mean something. I promise. I know you will. Margaret Chen printed documents. Wallace signed them with his shaking, genuine signature. Witnesses were called. Everything was legal, binding, irrevocable. When it was done, Wallace laid back exhausted, and Avery held his hand the way she'd held her grandmother's hand in the public ward of a different hospital, the way you hold on to people who are leaving, as though grip alone could anchor them to earth. Will you stay? Wallace asked. Until the end? I know it's a lot to ask. I'll stay, Avery said immediately. As long as you need. Thank you. His eyes closed. Thank you, Avery Mills. For everything. Wallace Crane died on a Thursday morning in December, peacefully, with Avery reading to him about revenge and redemption, about how the past shapes us but doesn't have to define us. His last words were appropriate chapter, and then he was gone, and Avery sat with him in the quiet that followed, in the space where a complicated man had briefly been better than his worst self, because someone had given him the chance. The funeral was massive, covered by every news outlet, attended by politicians and business titans, and people who'd never spoken to Wallace but wanted to be seen mourning him. Richard and Catherine came in handcuffs and orange jumpsuits, their trial pending. They didn't look at Avery. She didn't look at them. What mattered was after. What mattered was Margaret Chen's office on a cold January morning, signing paperwork that made the trust official, that secured her future in ways that still felt impossible. What mattered was enrolling in school, real school, with transcripts and counselors and the promise of college ahead. What mattered was the apartment Margaret helped her find, small but safe, hers. And what mattered was the letter Wallace had left, sealed, and given to Avery after the will was read. She opened it alone, in her new apartment, sitting on a second-hand couch with winter light slanting through clean windows. Dear Avery, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're wondering what to do with an absurd amount of money and an old man's hopes pinned to your shoulders. Let me make it simple. Be kind. Be just. See the world clearly and speak truth to it, even when silence is safer. That's all anyone can do. That's everything. You gave me something precious in my final days, the knowledge that I was worth saving, not for my money, but for my humanity, such as it was. I hope I've given you something equally precious, the freedom to become whoever you're meant to be, without poverty or fear shaping every choice. Build a good life, Avery Mills. Build it for both of us. Wallace, she cried then. Finally, for Wallace and her grandmother, and for every version of herself that had been hard and frightened and alone. But also for this, the impossible gift of a second chance, the weight of promise made real, the future spreading out like unwritten pages waiting for her story. Spring came early that year. Avery threw herself into school, discovered she loved mathematics, the clarity of it, the way problems had solutions if you looked hard enough. She volunteered at the youth hostel where she'd once stayed, helping kids navigate systems she'd barely survived. She learned to accept help when offered, to trust carefully but genuinely, to build a life that honored the people who had believed in her. The trust managers sent quarterly reports. The money grew. Avery tried not to think about it too much. It felt unreal, threatening to evaporate if examined too closely. What felt real was this: waking up safe, going to school, helping others, building slowly towards something that looked like purpose. Years later, when Avery graduated high school, and then college, and then business school, when she started her own foundation focused on youth homelessness and economic justice, when she gave speeches about spotting fraud and speaking truth and remembering that wealth means responsibility, years later, she would still think about that November morning in room 1147, about a dying man's hand in hers, about the moment she chose courage over invisibility. Because that's what Wallace had understood in the end, what his children never learned. Wealth is nothing. Legacy is nothing. What matters is the moment you see wrong and choose to name it. The moment you extend your hand to someone who has every reason not to trust you. The moment you decide that another person's dignity matters more than your safety. That's the only signature that matters. The one you write with your actions, your choices, your small, brave moments when no one's watching. Avery had written hers in a hospital room, stopping a pen from signing away a man's agency. And in return, Wallace had written his, a trust, a chance, a belief that one honest voice could change everything. In the end, they'd both signed something true. And that, Avery thought, made all the difference.